calm crickets, all doing their little thing, being nice and comfortable and pleasant, while they're about to be stomped in the head because they were crickets. For those of all of you on Prodcast or Pastcast, this should be BTW RLM 198. For those of you who want to go get the content, just put that in a search engine and you get to the webpage at reallibertymedia.com, and you can go through my content as I go through it and just give you the headlines mostly and don't read too much from it, partly because I think you need to read for yourself. You need to start working things out yourself. It just keeps coming, repeats back over and over. There's a definite and distinct difference between listening to what I say and putting in application, and getting what you know to actually do something and work, and not going in the wrong way, losing, and then getting beat down and saying, okay, well, you can't do that, and so there's nothing you can do. And it's not so just because you do the right thing doesn't mean it immediately makes the world all right. And this is another reminder that a lot of the world is not right. And we were here now in our peopleness trying to work out the problem that we have amongst ourselves, that we aren't so nice. We can think we're nice, and we may get in groups of people that we think we're nice, but ultimately there's going to be some rough edges. People have ideas. People are motivated by all kinds of interesting things that are not necessarily good for them. And so that's not going to make it. That's not going to work. We see that happening right now. We won't get too much into, like, you see what happened with the Trump issue. And so I guess we do have a new president. I don't get to talk much about the unqualified one anymore. And I can't tell you how glad I am to see that wound leave us. I watched that come in. I predicted all that. It turned out to be probably everything and more. I couldn't, you can't do anything specific. But at any rate, so we'll see what the next potential wound has for us. And as I said before, we're working very, very hard to claw ourselves out of the stinking abyss. This is not an easy thing to do. There's a mentality in the world that does not want to look at objective bases that we have established for ourselves. And that is seems to be our mission, that we go around showing that the system that exists is not the system that was supposed to be. And there's a big resistance about the way it is now, and that way it is now has been contorted and adulterated to what most all of us, most everybody listening to me has never seen a different adulteration. Some of us have seen and didn't know, or actually by before us, some of us still. There was another shift, and we didn't see that. We were born into all this. So we were born into a system we really can't taste, touch, or smell. But we can if we take off the abstraction goggles, if we stop making excuses, if we stop thinking we know so much and start doing much. That takes proper action. But before that, you have to gain some understanding. We can make it any name. I've chosen the battlefield because that seems to correlate so well across so many different authorities and jurisdictions of things that we've made up. It's all fiction, folks, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Fictions are tools that can be used as tools. But the problem has been we were not understanding about what others have taken advantage of all that to give themselves preferential and advantage, preferential treatment and advantage. And so now we squawk and complain continuously about this advantage. And we get to the things like the 99%, the 1%, and then they know us so well better than we know ourselves. They get a few of us to get out there and destroy garbage cans. And those that destroy the garbage cans don't understand that is their expression. But what is that expression? That's the limit of their power right there. They can't even do more than destroy a garbage can or break some glass or something. And so there's a whole other way that I've seen that we could work this out, and we sit in a much stronger place, and that's what I've been trying to get us to observe. There's a place apart of what you see, and there's a place apart with an objective basis by which that can be measured. In other words, there's a vocabulary, if I can say it that way. There's a discussion that can be had that government can't touch. And when it does, it's immediately, at least minimally, a felony. Minimally, a felony. We're not talking small potatoes here. And that's on the penal side, the criminal side. I'm not even talking about the fiduciary side. And then we have the omission and commission stuff. I've talked about all this. So, I'll get over to what I wanted to start with. This week, if you tuned in to Smoke and Mirrors, there was Jennifer Ruby, I think her name was, on talking about her experience with patents. And I would refer you to that. And listen, they kind of went off and on about things, and they stayed pretty good to it, but they moved around. But you wanted to listen to the patent information, and I got in a little late, but I was able to listen to some of it, and I'm sitting here listening, and I'm qualifying everything that's being said, and I have to say she did fairly well. But interestingly, the same problem, and not to dismiss anything here, just to show a correction. I'm trying to augment something here to get you. It seems to be a problem that leads people into a problem of perception and then action. And this is why these are so correlated and so important to understand. Most of the information she did really well. I would say, okay, now that you've spoken about this, I'm talking to myself now. Yes, I do that sometimes, listening to people. Now that you've broached that idea, now you need to move into this area. Now you need to move in. And she was actually pretty good near the end of that broadcast. One in particular that I'm always interested in is that people who understand this soil disposal will also talk about the relation back doctrine, who know what they're doing. And not to say that now because you can say, I talk about the relation back doctrine, I know all about it. No, there's a real thing behind that. And sure enough, she talked about it, and she talked about it right in line with where she was going. And I felt really good about that. Then at the end of the broadcast, just so happens, some of her study and a lot of her study has come from my colleague, actually, in which I felt that started to make sense why my confirmation, her ability to go through it, was really consistent with what I understand. And, I don't know if a lot of you have been with me that forever and long, but Ron Gibson and I did a 2 separate program broadcast. I think it might have been so far back as to be on Revolution Broadcasting, though I don't remember. I forgot to go look and see if I could find that. And we talked about the process of patenting and bringing yourself to accepting the assignment, the assignee status. Now, this is where the problem I perceive a problem, and it came out this week. I was talking with somebody this week about their interest and endeavor to make evidence of the chain of title of possession. And so here's what I noticed was a little bit of a problem, and it apparently is a problem. There's a concept, and I don't know where it all came from, and I haven't researched where the origins are. It's something about bringing the patent forward. Now, I'll just let you know that's not really what's going on, and I'll agree with it only to the extent that if you know what you're saying when you say you bring the patent forward. What you're doing is you're bringing the authority of the patent forward. It's not that you bring the patent forward. The patent always sits where it is in the record of the day that it was made, and it sits in the record for a reason there. It doesn't move anywhere. It exists. All land that you are on that's privately held has a patent to it, whether that was a federal patent or whether that was issued by the state. Now, we do have state deeds, potential problems, but I don't think that the only potential problem is that you now identified a usurper, and so let's not address that quite yet. But I noticed the one mistake that you have to be careful, and it apparently makes a problem, is this concept of bringing the patent forward. That's not what you're doing. You are simply creating the chain of title of possession that links you, the property possessor of today, back to the original patentee. That's what you're doing. Now, the problem occurred is I thought I heard repeatedly stated that you are creating this abstract of evidence, abstract of title. That's not true. And this is not to listen. Just understand. You got to get your words just adjusted a little bit here. Apparently, that's causing a problem. That's how the abstract of title is how they stole your idea, what you actually convey. You don't convey land. You convey the evidence of the land that the evidence of which tells you that you own a certain part. You grant. That's a grant side, not a sale. The abstract of title that came in after the 30s to about the 50s, but in the shift, was the state and government and commerce's way of interfering, interceding into that, and gave you an abstract of the title. It's a summary of the title. What they ought to have been maintaining was the chain of title of possession, which is all the documents that make up certified copies of all the documents that you would take when you acquired the property, and you would have been, if we would have been knowledgeable, we would have been taking them as an assignee by the grantor. No sales, no market value. And so we're not dealing in an abstract of title anymore. That's what you can go find. That's what they actually hand you. In fact, anybody that's a property owner should have that in their escrow papers, or whatever your state does, or even the title company or the insurance company. There's a summary of the chain of owners. There's no evidence that that's actual. And the state or the commerce entity called the title insurance company gives insurance that that's going to be accurate, but they only hand you a deed, which is only an interest. It's not the evidence of your chain of possession back to the patent. So the patent, the patent sits where it is. Back in the day it was issued and created. And your rights relate back to that through the chain of evidence that you produce in certified copies in your patent sandwich as you recreate that chain of authority of possession to you. The abstract was the summary. You are not doing that anymore. So I wanted to make that clarity. If you did listen, if you don't listen, didn't hear that, then I'm clarifying that for you before you get involved, because I've been talking to people and that seems to be a problem. They're confusing this idea. The abstract is a summary. You are going back and you are creating the chain of evidence of possession. That is all the recorded documents in the county. You start with the land patent. It's already there. You don't stop thinking that you're bringing it forward, the patent forward, to put your name on it. It's no such thing. The name on that patent stays there forever. It starts the proof of the private the disposal of the government into private possession to its heir, his or her heirs, and assigns forever. Your rights relate back from today back to not just the patent, but the act allowing for its existence, the act of Congress allowing for its existence. You're not relating even back to the patent. That's just evidence of the fulfillment of the act of Congress in its obligations and duties to do so. Typically underneath the state's enabling acts, the documents that created the state. And they did that. They did it that way. I never understood it for a long time. And they conveyed the property of the territory of the state as it became a state to the federal government to dispose. It's an obligation and duty. The state took subject to whatever the disposal was. In other words, if there's no reservations, that's it. The state agreed. And it did that so that there would be no remaining interest in the state over those lands to private possession. There's no ability that the state can ever come back, well, again, without being a criminal, and take back this land. It was always vested in the people prior to the government. And you heard a little bit about that on that broadcast. So I just want to clarify something here. It becomes a problem. I didn't think it was such a big deal because I really don't do this too much anymore. I've been focused on other things. That the abstract of title is what exists today. It's the summary of who owned it. It's not the proof of certified copies of the evidence of the chain of possession that has gone on between the issuance of the original patent to you. And when you develop that, and then you get the posting, they've also made a comment about we just post this, or we put it in a paper, or we post it. No, you be careful. You have to go to your state law now rules here regarding the law about what due process is and what sufficiency of public notice is. Once you build your record, and there's other things, you have a couple of affidavits to put into this thing, you have to post it for public viewing for a certain amount of time. That is not an arbitrary number. That's been determined by the state legislature so that the courts can take on the sufficiency of the notice over the time and the place. so that everybody knows where to go look if they're going to keep track of these land issues, these soil issues. Nothing is supposed to be kept secret. And so go to your statutes to find the date, what's sufficient public notice for purposes of these issues, these soil disposal issues or land issues or mortgage, all these things. They can vary from 30 to 60 days. It depends what the legislature in that state decided it would be. It would order the judiciary to recognize as sufficient. That's all we're dealing with here. It's not them commanding anything. It's actually doing you a favor. Otherwise, you'd have people, 15 days was enough, or 10 days was enough, and maybe it's actually not. And they found that it isn't. So let's use the objective basis. Why make such a big deal? And if no one has a claim after that time, you now have the statute says everyone is defaulted out and has no position. Now let me go to the next. So the first question I've been hearing is the convolution of an abstract of title versus a chain of title, or what that more clearly is, the chain of the evidence of the possessions from the patent till today. Now that can be quite an extensive research. You go to the county to do it through the archives. You have to read every document through there, and you have to understand what they're saying. You have to track out everything, every interest that might be there to make sure that you understand who the interests are, because it still may not be quite whole when it came to you. There may be defects that have to be worked out. If a state has a deed, it was stated in the broadcast that there would be potential. They left that question out. My thought and the laws will show you that the state would be an interloper. They're not in privity to the forever by a sign or by hereditament through the patent, and therefore they're a third-party interloper when they make a state deed and steal back the minerals. Now that's a color of title in the state that has to be dealt with later. So let's not. I want to broach that just to let you know you're going to have to. I think there's an answer to it, but you have to have your evidence first. Your evidence is recreating and not in creation and fabrication. It's recompiling is what it is. The chain of evidence of authority between you, the proper possessor, who you have to prove yourself to, even through your deed. Your deed gives you that interest if there's no encumbrance. And then mortgages, there's only an encumbrance over the commerce side, not the patent. So you have to still be subject to your own agreements, but it's not supposed to interfere. Now, the state has made a statement about homestead exemptions. I don't think that that's valid. For the most part, I would just go with it if that's what we had to go with until we got better knowledge. But it says assigns and heirs and assigns forever to the exclusion of the state and the federal government. Just means just exactly that. And anything being created contrary to that is not valid. And the other problem is that I've told you that you're going before a bar association system that is attempting to steal your property. So you heard also later that she was having a little bit of problem with the county, that the state actually recognized the patent authority, had no claim, but that she was having a problem with the county. So I heard, and I've told you before, I have to work to my listenership without response from you. And so I kind of rely a lot, actually, on any communication that you might have. And so this week, it just so happened there was a patent question and decision condition. I had to get that straightened out, some ideas straightened out of substantial foundational law that you proceed through. It's not just an opinion. And then I heard the program on Rob Works, Smoke and Mirrors, I think it was yesterday, and Jennifer Ruby, and she came to a point where she has done this process, and the county won't let up. The county won't let go. So I heard a problem, and that's where I start to work, folks. I tell you, bring me a problem, and if it's in my study area, my experience, I may have an offer of suggestion on what to do. So I don't like hearing people having trouble. And so I jumped into the chat. I was kind of going through, and I kind of rocked in at the right time, I guess, how that all works. And I jumped into the chat, which I usually don't do, and I gave 2 suggestions. So this is what I wanted, why I played the crickets today instead of thinking that this was a victory as a proper action. I changed my mind right before the broadcast and said, I'm going to play the crickets, and then we're going to show there's something more than just knowing these laws and doing the right thing. There is a real enemy out there. They want to steal your stuff. And it's not knowing a thing, it's doing the thing right to defend it. That there was no answer to this continued aggression by the county. What I offered, and you'll hear her say, if you go back and listen to her broadcast, she says, I've now learned to go look for remedies in equity. I'm telling you folks, I had to smile. There's not many people that get this point. And so I jumped in, and the only thing that came to my mind when she's talking about having to defend about a case coming in February, she has a problem. She has a question. She didn't have an answer. The answer that came to me to suggest, again, it's not my case, it's not my determination, is to do a quo warranto. A quo warranto against the judge, against the capacity of the court, his capacity, his competence, and the establishment authority of the court to redetermine the patent upon a fraud, upon felony, and upon color of authority interposition as a due process violation of the court, what's called a fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court's not a fraud. It's a destruction of due process. And you ask that you do a quo warranto, that's a remedy in equity, that shifts the burden. I keep suggesting all these things to you, that how you now have to use this against them when the criminal is coming to steal your stuff. And you ask the judge to show in the record his or her burden, how he has capacity, how he has competence, how the court itself that he resides in has the establishment power to contravene and determine an issue before the court, and then also upon a fraud, felonies, and the fraud upon the court. Now, I don't know of any judge that can answer in the affirmative that he has it, so you'll find another enemy that's coming against fiduciary breach now in the form of an officer if they don't relieve and say they don't have authority and dismiss the case as essentially being frivolous, and then go after the county officials that are pressing that attack against the patent. So here's the point is that it's not enough that she did the work. That's the evidence of her right. And then someone comes along to try and steal it from her. That's a crime. I don't know about anybody else, but you're not going to just stop. A criminal will be a criminal. It doesn't matter where they originate. They're in the government or not. At least you're positioned with the evidence, and then you need to know the tools, the equitable tools that protect that. And so I want to convey that from yesterday. There's more that she can do. I also suggested she recontact Ron Gibson, and he might have some other ideas. Ron Gibson literally wrote the book on patents, and I haven't read it, so I don't know what's all in it. I just know people who read it are just fascinated and impressed by how much there is to know, and yet it is knowable, and that it's really an absolute response to the government interposition, the government's attempted destruction of its obligations and duties. You just have to know that's coming and have your record for it. So my response to her was, before I found out she was going to before she claimed that she had a court case, was also to go after the one who's signing the letter that claims a continuing interest in the county, have them write a letter to show cause how they're not committing a felony under color of law. Find her theft by extortion statute and felony coercion statutes in her state law, and ask upon their action, their color of law action, where the state essentially, she had all the answers, she doesn't put it together in a remedy. The state has stated that they have no interest. The county's a political subdivision. Where did this private party under color of county authority have right to come to interfere with that patent? Show cause how they're not committing theft by extortion and felony coercion under color of authority to interfere. What right do they have in that capacity to not to hand that property to the county for its demands? It is something you now go privately against that one. And so the failure here is to understand how the evidence that you have. I told you over and over that what makes America different was that we have these land disposal laws, a system of records that keeps track of the possession, and purportedly, up until recently, the courts to recognize the records that are kept in the counties for that chain of authority and law of the land in possession, not merely interests as deeds and abstracts will evidence. We have a power in these courts, and the problem is we have usurpers, and we have to out them as well. We have to know about that. So, I didn't view this total thing as a success. Part of it is But ultimately, the rubber meets the road where you have the ability, where you finally know how to use this evidence, even against the court, in order to protect yourself. And so it's not just because you got it right, you win. When we finally stop being a people that attack each other, it'll be a better day. Until then, we are sitting in a precarious position that we really ought not have ever been placed. But we, the people, have allowed the criminality against us. And that's, again, the accessories. We're accessories to the crime against us. As I look up, I've got this little page. I just put some notes down on my search idea. I noticed landgrantpatent.org was the organization that she has, or the website, and it says right on the title, and this is what kind of got me to start talking about this, in the confusion, chain of title equals abstract of title. That's not true. The abstract of title is the summary of the title. Actually, they list them as owners or in that way, but the chain of title is actually the chain of evidence of possession. It's the literal certified copy evidence of that, not an abstract list of who was involved. And in fact, the abstract is not equal to the chain of title. The chain of title being the proof of certified copies of the literal chain of possession. You chain yourself to this patent, the authority of it, relating back to its authority, which relates to the originating legislative act which allowed it. The chain of title is the evidence that you need, not an abstract of the evidence. It's the actual evidence. Why? You have to have about 3 copies of these certified copies, make 3 packets. We called them sandwiches, I think. These patent sandwiches, they have your affidavit and thing in the posting. And I can't remember. I have to go back. Like I said, I don't think too much about some of this. I'm now having to rethink about it. Your patents, now you make 3 of them. Why? Well, this is evidence. This is gold here, folks. This is more valuable than gold. This is the land. This is the evidence. The evidence that prevails in any court of law, even against the courts. Now, the only challenge to that would be someone who could challenge the originating document for fraud. I don't think anybody alive now about those, but I have to leave that open. But other than that, there's no challenge to these documents. The only challenge is the criminal trying to steal it from you. And so the chain of title is literally evidence. You want 3 copies. Why? You want to keep one for that you can use. That's original. It's an original. And the only way you know that they're originals is they have ink signatures on everything. They're not just copies. Every affidavit has an ink signature. You can do that to any number of original copies that you want. You make 3. So when you make your affidavit, you're making 3 of everything, and you make 3 of all the certified copies. Why? You keep one for yourself. You hide one that's easy to get to, that's safe and secure. This is gold now. This is more powerful and more valuable than gold now. This chain, this chain of title, this evidence of possession. You secure one with yourself that you can readily get. You put another one close by that's as secure from destruction as you can, and you hand the 3rd copy to a trusted friend, family, whatever, that they put away in another safe space. Okay, so because it's evidence, and any one is the original evidence in that regard, even though only one is used at the time that you post it in the public or the courthouse, wherever the statute that the legislature in your state has said to post it for the amount of time. So I want to clarify that it's not just about doing the patent. It's about, this is how you defend yourself. You establish. Remember, I've always said about the record. This is the prevailing record that you are making. It's the prevailing evidence and record in a court of law that not even a court of law doesn't even have an authority to hear. It's settled in that chain. Talk about a blockchain. Yeah, man, this one's not hackable. It's only hackable when you let them tell you that it's not what it is. Like you heard Jennifer saying that they resisted her, and they're still resisting her at the local level. I say turn that into a private harm by the one signing the letter to make the continuing claim. Now that she's in court, that's perfected. They've harmed her. Now, I didn't discuss this part. I just put some couple things in the chat room. They found interest or value in that. They'll have to do the research now. I told you I can put you to the front, put you down the path. I can't take that with you. But it's all there. So the question you heard, I don't want it to remain a question of inaction or question of the response. That's the crickets. The failure to understand how to protect yourself is you being that cricket at that level. For as far as you went, you still tripped. So we're talking strictly on the title, on the chain of evidence to you, and that establishes your when you finally get your affidavit, you're an assignee. You're not the hereditament side. You're only the assignee, which is still is equal. But that's the two provisions of the patent. Anything else is not under a patent. Anything else has actually been commercialized. And so they use that in the commercial side, and that's how you get your funding and your mortgages and all that kind of stuff. So I won't go into more how this all works. I want people to understand the first steps. And don't get confused. You're not bringing the patent forward. You're not changing the name on the patent. You're simply making a chain of record evidence that you stack from the oldest document in your sandwich to the newest document to you, essentially, in your ability to make the claim as an assignee in your affidavit of acceptance for that in the package sandwich, that you connect up back to that, and it is separate and distinct from the deed side, which is also you're obligated to honor your own word and your own deeds. There's nothing don't think you can undo that by thinking that it's special magic. This is some serious law. You get yourself in some serious problem. So do it right. But you have to do it right. You can't just think you're doing it right. You can't come to a middle of the fork in the road and find out, I don't have an answer. And that's what you heard a little bit. I don't want to dismiss much of anything that we heard yesterday. I want to augment some of that so that we don't have the confusion. Not that I heard it in her, except for the remedy. I've heard it in a couple other people I was helping this week in not understanding this little dynamic. It's a subtle thing. You're not changing anything. You're just accepting that there's a chain of authorities that you are connecting to by a chain of evidence. Again, when I tell you about due process, what does the legislature of your state or the judiciary of your state say? Sufficient proof of due process and notice and opportunity has been, is situated in the rules. It's called service of process. That's why you send a certified copy of mail, a certified mail certificate, and a green card. The statute says that secures evidence of proof of service. That's a statutory guideline, and that's objective. If you've done that, you've qualified it. If you don't, then they found out that you didn't. They can have a defense against it. Same thing with this patent. There's a requirement to have your evidence together in order to prove that it's there. The abstract is not sufficient. That's all the patent, getting the patent together, information together is doing. It's doing what they stole from us, what they used to do. You used to be handed a package of information on all the previous owners on the documents, and then they started to do these abstracts, and so they kept back those important evidences, and they gave you the evidence that package was okay, and then they handed you a deed. And so you have an interest. An interest in what? An interest in the commerce side. That's all regulable. That's now the real property they're talking about. That's the tenant that you become. And you see it like your escrow papers, you see it all. That's again, commerce. The commerce becomes business. It's just simply that much. You're just a legal entity no matter how you deal with that. That's all what's been going on. So we get you back over to the patent. Make your evidences, and you want to make it authoritative. That's why it's so tedious. Evidence is real stuff. It has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in each document, and they all have to tie together in each document so that they create a body, a chain of possession and right of possession to an originating place, and we call that the patent. Now, don't get lost in the allodial. That just tells you the quality, but we're not recognizing that here necessarily in the first instance. You do it by, you recognize the power of that through the allodial view. You just recognize it in how everyone can't touch it. And this is the thing I think people are missing. We were in a discussion in the UC-wide chat. It's like, we got to go through these dictionaries. I said, I haven't used a dictionary now. That doesn't mean I don't know words. I know words. So there's only two actual dictionaries that legal and law looks at, and it's been declared by the legislature of the state, which is where your property is, And it says the 1828 dictionary, and then the other dictionary that most people kind of look past and poo-poo is the one in the statutes. And I haven't really used the dictionary for a long, long time to be effective in what I'm doing, because it's not about the definition of the words. It's about the principles underlying what's going on that's being violated. That the acts and the actions and the subject matter that you use define the separation. You don't get into the tedium of the words. When I'm talking, you've heard me say possession, possession, possession. Then I mentioned interest. They're not the same. When I'm mentioning interest in property, it's not the same as possession of it. And are you possessing the land? No, you possess the evidence that you have right in exclusive use and enjoyment of a parcel, if I can call it that way. So there's a very subtle condition going on here that everybody misses in their need to look at bunches of dictionaries. Oh yes, I've looked at tons of dictionary definitions. I've looked at America's Juris Secundum. I've read it. I've understood it. It boils down for me to principles. And when I started working the principles, and I could identify where the government could go and where the government couldn't go, I had a problem when we go there, because then we have the criminals in government. But that is notwithstanding the problem. I could also then say, well, if I use the word possession, that's outside of the realm of a legal interest. Interest is not possession, not in the concept of the soil. And so the language it defined itself as subject matter-wise, not dictionary-wise. And this is where I see a lot of people doing a problem when they analyze too deeply without context, purpose, intent, and place, and there are other things, terminology. So enough on all that. I hope those of you that are interested, understand there's really a certain way to go through this. I didn't define that. And when you talk about what form do you use, the form is described in the requirements. It's not a form like we would typically be handed to us to sign, like an application, already made out to us so we can cut our own throat and hang ourselves to bleed. No, these are the steps of conforming a record to be the quality that's required in a court for evidence. So the word form has a funny imposition, and people kind of miss these subtleties. Again, I just hear it. This week was kind of interesting again. Periodically this comes through. Something, I'm totally out of my mind. I'm not really thinking about patents, but it's so close to what we do all the time. When I talk about mining rights and mining property, that's as patent. We're dealing in that all the time, but it's not so formalized because of this obstruction that the government allowed when they went from a system of evidence being granted and people knowing that to a system of abstracts and deeds underwriting that, deemed to be sufficient to show and prove an interest, not the possession. Why? Because they didn't have the evidence. So land and evidence are just, I don't think, is not separable. So I hope that's clarified some things. I really appreciated hearing what Jennifer was saying, and I hope that she can work through her little thing here, and she could actually get some people in quite a bit of trouble, given that she just keeps methodically going through what she goes through. So while I'm not saying it defeated the crickets, she's so very close, and the way why it's not being the crickets aren't defeated in that instance is because of the lack of proper knowledge of the more proper response against a well-known oppression and criminal conduct within the system itself. Moving on now, we'll get into the tabs if that makes any sense to us. Looked at all this stuff, and as I look now to move and transfer, and I see digits, or I see encryption as the next coming up, and all the things that we have access to in our digital world, I'm reminded somehow, that's what it was, the Grimner announced on Fricker's Ball, and then he had told me just before, that he had made a request for, apparently my broadcast was the first one he asked for, and then he went and made more requests, so I'm hoping everybody gets in. Broadcast Behind the Woodshed has just been accepted by iHeart Radio, or iHeart.com or something. And so we're going to be available through iHeart. It was just, this broadcast has been approved. I'm hoping now all the rest get pulled in, so RLM Radio gets a presence as well, not just the shows. that anybody who understands that, iHeart, you can get, I guess, go through iTunes and iHeartRadio and something else, I don't remember. Whatever it works, folks. Or you have to have a Facebook account too, I realize. So even though I'm on, my broadcast is on iHeartRadio.com or iHeartRadio, iHeart.com, whatever it was. iHeart.com, I think it is. And you can find me at behind. You just do a search behind the Woodshed, and it's available there as a podcast. I couldn't get into my own broadcast because apparently the country I live in isn't serviced. So I thought that was kind of funny. I also thought it was kind of interesting that they require that you sign in. So those of you that have Facebook or Google something or other, I suppose you can get this pretty easily. There's no provision otherwise. But the point is, thank you, Grimner. In fact, it was interesting. We must have been thinking about the same. I had noticed iHeart, didn't know much about it, couldn't find an easy way into it, and I have more time to spend otherwise. But he had made the request, so we've been approved. You can find us there. Maybe that's some way to get more listeners and get people into understanding what the dynamic is in the world they live in. Get back to reality, the dose of reality I try to bring here, and hopefully where we can find people doing something, give advice if we can, or suggestions that are much better than what I can hear just about anywhere else. Much better because we are using them ourselves. And even though it may not be so, what can I say, academic, I don't go through I'm very cautious. I've just seen so many people take what I give them and hurt themselves. I get real cautious about lining out too much. In other words, in the chat I said, do a quo warranto. I gave six different, I gave the remedy, then I gave six different elements to be qualified, and I left it at that. They're going to have to pick that up. It sounded like they're going to, and they understood that, and they appreciated that. And so, again, we work together to help each other. It's so much faster and easier for me to help that way than it is to try and, I got to kind of drag you along if you're not quite doing the work that you need to do, that I need to see that you're doing. So it's a matter of doing enough of you heard the term due diligence. It's that. It's also understanding why, how you use the evidence, who may come against you, and how you defeat that. And so while we're all together, like I said, this is an interesting meeting. See, I was able to jump into a chat room and advance two pieces of my view, and what we would do, how would we respond, very valuable information to them that were not available to them without this connection. And so we have another place to be found behind the Woodshed for RLM, and hopefully, like I said, I hope we just get more. Again, and anybody who can make requests, I guess it can be helpful. Or if you find some place that you might want to hear the broadcast, RLM and stuff, tell Grimner. You jump in the chat at reallibertymedia.com and tell him, hey, we found another spot. Maybe you can request there. As I've asked you, if you find Sunday afternoon where another network is only playing replays or no live shows or nothing at all, maybe write them an email and ask them to syndicate the broadcast live. And why not? But it's surprising some people won't. It's interesting that people will not syndicate or not live broadcast this on their networks, which has always got me interested in those types of people. Who are they? Why? I mean, it's certainly not like I've got run-of-the-mill stuff, I'm sure. And if I do, no one's told me. Maybe that's the secret again. Maybe everyone's laughing at me. Yeah, keep talking. I know better. So, again, we need your support in talking it up, folks. I don't get out much to do it myself. I'm not, like I said, if I was the Tony Robbins of all this problem, I probably wouldn't have a problem, but I'm not. So I fess up to that. I can't do it. Not in me. Why I appreciate Vince Easley's help so much when he volunteered to jump in and do what he could. And I understand he's traveling around the country now, and things are doing well for him, and I wish him all the luck in the world, and wish him to see the new sights with the new eyes. I mean, he's really got a new perspective. And to me, I hear there's ever so few, but those few that are hearing and putting together what I'm saying and seeing that it does work, it does apply, it does give you that perspective to start to reanalyze what you're doing. that's really all I need to continue. I really don't get behind the continual naysayers. Those are people that just would rather continue to complain. Don't offer a solution different either. That's the other thing that gets me. I mean, wouldn't that be great if all of us didn't have an answer, but we were all doing the thing we thought we needed to do, right? I mean, we would at least see things going on. Right now, we're just hearing complaining and false starts, and oh, I don't understand this, and I don't see what you're talking about, and oh, I know it all, and so I'm gonna just stick to what I all know, and it's actually nothing. Why? Because it's just an engine revving without any traction. Just sits there revving your motor. And against that, we're so far, the people I work with are so far beyond that, it's not even funny. Even though it takes so bleeding slow to see things happen. Man, that's been a real, if that's one thing I've been learning, it's to be patient. I'll tell you that. Even though that when they come on you, it's all in a fervor, and you better have some answers quick. So, for me, the patent issue was patent information you can listen to pretty well, just to augment if you please, augment what I've said about that, and build your patent chain of evidence, and then don't just jump into it. Then start conferring with people about the right thing to do, and please discern who's telling you the right stuff. I don't know what else to say about that. It's a little bit more difficult because everyone has all these ideas that sound good, but they really aren't. They don't, and I think the point is they don't understand the foundation. In the concept of moving the patent forward, that doesn't sound, just on surface, that doesn't sound too bad. But what it's done in the concept for people has created false impressions, which has either stopped people or confused people or got them going down the wrong understanding. And it's not all that complicated. So I prefer what you heard yesterday. I use this. We've used this for years and years and years. Hardly nobody talks about it except for us. So when she used it, I realized, wow, somebody's listening to what we were saying. It's called the relation-backed doctrine. I got that out of a grant law versus, in court cases. It was a paper I put together and compiled of case law way back, I don't know, back in 2005 or something like that. And there's this relation-backed doctrine, which was all important to understand. And so that's what you want to rely on. The relation-backed doctrine. You're making a chain of evidence of the possession literally linking you in evidence from where you are today back to the originating document, and your rights and property and everything relate back to the four corners, the statement in the four corners, the context of the patent, but not just the patent, also the law enacting that patent, its intent and purpose, and with the obligations and duties. So you're not bringing it forward, you're actually relating yourself today back so that you can use the laws before, which were so much cleaner than the noise you see today, which is stripping everybody of property. But getting into the digital side, and we were at iHeart, and thank you again, Grimmer. Hope we get somebody coming in. It's hard to know why other places have more listenerships. And then I don't get any feedback. So that's a little bit more difficult for me. But I found very interesting. Again, crickets, but maybe not so, folks. And I don't know about this. I just want you to be aware of it. In this oppression we have coming down in digital lives, digital life and death, Lavabit, interesting little service that was provided for, got attacked. Now, Lavabit, encrypted email service once used by Snowden, is back. I thought this was very interesting. CEO Ladar Levison has had custody of the service's SSL encryption keys that could have helped the government obtain Snowden's password, although the FBI insisted it was only after Snowden's account that was the key to the kingdom that would have helped the FBI agents obtain the user's credentials as well. And because they imposed upon him, he shut Lavabit down. And he's coming back. And I'm only going to go off the report. You're going to really have to do your due diligence on this. He's coming back better. He's making it so that he doesn't even have information in his service. I'm not promoting it. I know nothing about it more than this. I guess my point here is that this guy stood up against the government, took what it took, got beat down, still there, came back, and is going to try to make it even better. This service is going to offer 3 modes of security. The first one is he trusts, it's a server trust program where you trust the server he's got in order to make the keys, though the paranoid service allows you to manage those keys, and he can't ever see what's going on. And so, to me, this was more of a cricket action. You jump in, you see what they're going to do in the digital world, and you come back bigger and better. And I'm hoping I'm saying that with honesty, given I don't know. It just sounds right. This is one guy standing up, folks, and I just wanted to make acknowledgement of that. I don't know who this guy LeVar is. I've kind of admired how he stood up against the government where everyone else gets beat down. He took some lumps, but he's coming back, and the thing is he is coming back. And so I think it's an example for us, whether or not I fully understand it all, whether or not it ultimately gives us the full measure of security. There are people in the world that are going to hopefully. Well, I hope there's more of us, more of them. Actually, I don't do this anymore at all, not even close. That we may be able to rely on. So, not that I'm even into Snowden. That's a whole story behind it in itself. And again, these psyops seem to everywhere. The point is what are we going to do? What are we going to continue to agree as an accessory to the crimes against us? And we need to get together where we can. And I guess at some level of trust is required. Certainly some knowledge. But open sourcing all that, I think he is also open sourcing that system, may provide some more, not a lot, I mean, not guaranteed, but some more opinions about the securities of it. And I say there's now no absolute, because as you know, lots of people are looking at Linux, and they've been finding, these Linux has quite a few problems, actually. They've been sitting there for years. So the digital world is your digital life, is your digital death as well, and it's available to be hacked by whomever, it seems. Certainly better and smarter than you. So the interesting thing about law of the land, literally the patent is the law of your land, and the law that enabled that, that's not hackable so easily, right? That's why I was telling you about the Chicago County Court going to the blockchain for property. See, they're just doing it on an abstract title. I told you then, it's not the evidence of the chain of possession. So you can never get the authority, the evidence, can you? I hope my last, hour? I took an hour to do all that. I was supposed to go a whole lot faster today. So much to talk about. My last hour should have pointed that out as well. And as I say that, just the word consistency pops in my mind. This is just confirmation and consistency of what I've been telling you all this time, whether or not you put that 2 and 2 together. You connected those dots. The evidence, real evidence, is all important. Vulnerabilities in the digital life and death here could mean your digital life and death, and whether or not you take it on and how much. $billion hacker gang now using Google services to control its banking malware. To me, I don't even need to know the story. Google is allowing themselves to be used by a hacking gang. This is just one big mess. Digital vulnerabilities left and right, and aiders and abettors everywhere. One of the most successful cyber criminal gangs ever that's known for the theft of $1 billion from over 100 banks across 30 countries back in 2015 is back with a bang. The Carbonac cyber gang has been found abusing various Google services to issue command and control communications for monitoring and controlling the machines of unsuspecting malware victims. Force Point Security Labs researchers said Tuesday that while investigating an active exploit sent in phishing messages as an RT attachment, they discovered that the Carbonac group has been hiding in plain sight by using Google services for command and control. So these people know this stuff better than certainly I will. Remember about your attachments. Do not click on do not even click on anything unless you can identify where that link goes. And a lot of that time you can get the property. Just look at the right click and go to properties. I don't care what the thing you see is. Find where that darn thing is going, and then go search with a search engine where that thing is going. I don't think I ever click on anything before I verify what I'm doing with that, what's going on. On your document programs, turn off macros. Absolutely turn them off. So, and then you can't, if you're not clicking on attachments, you're not going to get, the likelihood starts to reduce. You protect yourself. Understand that. Now, there's another thing I wanted to kind of refer to in the past here and bring it up forward. What I meant about this, it comes in the news. It's the stuff is, I told you not to do this, and here's now why. Republican lawmakers in 5 states propose bills to criminalize peaceful protests. Now, I'm not going to even read more. My point here was just to let you know, this is getting, insane. The insane are in control of the silent. Even you criminalize peaceful, to the point that they'll tell you in a commercial vehicle, you can run down and kill people. But here's the point. I told you stop going out in protest. They want you to go do that. You're better empowered to not go inside the system with the proper statement, with the proper action. And so I just wanted to remind you, I've said this before, there's going to be a day you're going to put your life in your hands going out. The government will allow other people to kill you. The cops will kill you. You get out there and get in a mob, and it's open season. It's here. And for those of you that think that the Republicans were going to save you all, stop thinking that way, please. I got that proof in our lawsuit. We proved we sued the Republican Party and we sued the Democratic Party, and they both defaulted, agreeing that they commit treason, make war on the laws of the United States. So that's their inclination. We didn't sue all lawful action, but this certainly sounds like what I told you before. It's a continuation of the system of oppression, that no matter what you do, you're going to be set against, and it's going to be validated and legal to do so. You have to be somewhere else. Don't go out in that battlefield. You see how it gets turned anyway. If anybody doesn't understand this, the United States of America is under its color revolution now. You're missing a lot. It's nonsense stuff that gets you all divided. Even when you go out and say, no, we got to, kumbaya together, they beat you up and claim peace, peace, oh, peace. So, the Republicans around the country are making laws and rules that you can be attacked, even a peaceful protest. It certainly doesn't sound like First Amendment compliance, but they don't care. North Dakota is kind of on the lead. I talked about that before. They agreed to weaponize drones. And then everybody up in Dapple's all wondering what's going on with the North Dakota using that now. Come on. I told you, don't be there. Be somewhere else. Be and do better. So, enough with that. I didn't want to bring him up too much, but I wanted to at least touch base for a memory aid into the future, because this guy's young enough, he's going to be around with us, the unqualified one. I found this, I didn't quite get this before he was, his final act was that final helicopter ride. I really was waiting for that final act of that helicopter ride. He gets out of town, gets out of Dodge. Well, he went to a military base and made another speech. But notwithstanding, Obama's legacy makeover, an 8-year reality check was written in January 11th that I wanted to talk to you before. Only thing I want to point, this will be in the blogcaster. I won't go through it. It's a listing of a lot of the reality of this guy Obama and what he did that I think if you take cognizance of and have in your mind will be useful in the future to demarcate what was done and what we have to focus on undoing, whether it's this guy Trump or whether it's our suggestions or whatever influence we can have, that we need to, as you heard, I think Trump's some initial actions were to actually start repealing certain things. I understand he's going to have 168 executive orders, repealing a lot of executive orders, and I understand, though it's just hearsay, they're going to actually define, the chief executive is going to define waters of the United States as navigable rivers, something the agents, the EPA or the Army Corps of Engineers failed to do. And so these things become very powerful to you and I, because the agencies then can't go out and beat you down. The states can't even use it, because most of the states, their DEQs are tied to this federal water law, this federal Clean Water Act, which are supposed to only be relative to navigable rivers, and the agencies have been completely derelict to come up with the proper definition. So an executive in the office doing proper things can actually help us. Do I understand the politics? Do I understand his motives? Do I understand what he's going to do? No, but if we can get that much fixed, then where the land rights are, we are less oppressed. And if that's what our part will be as we claw ourselves out of the stinking abyss, I'm going to take that part. I'm going to make a foundation from that. It needs to be there. And so this Obama's legacy makeover, an 8-year reality check, was a list of things. I started reading through it. I said, well, this is a pretty nice and concise statement. I'm sure there's a whole lot more, but this was a pretty extensive statement of what the reality about this guy was. And people supported all this, too. Don't forget, you've got a whole, half the population at least, that supported this guy's treachery. That's going to be whitewashed. And you need to know what was whitewashed and how, so you can be able to defend the policies of these people that are coming to continue the progress. Remember, that's just a covered word for progressive. And so we come out to this statement that this unqualified one, Obama dude, he writes a final thank you letter to Americans, one of the many final, acts that he was doing all the last few days. And I found this very interesting because I want to provide this so you read it if you didn't see it. It was through ABC News. It was the letter reproduced to the so-called Americans from Obama. And I found this very interesting, what he said here. Not that I read. In fact, I read nothing up until this last letter. I just wanted to see only the last, his departing shot, because good riddance. Don't let the door hit. As I tweeted on many tweets, whatever. Peeps? What? His letter to Americans, he says in the title, it says, "You made me a better president and you made me a better man." Wow, what a lowlife. If that's all good as he got, is to be a Nobel laureate that bombed more people and spent more on war. Wow, we got a real problem with this guy. But what was really interesting to me is, he goes, "Before I leave my note for our 45th president," because his first paragraph says what these last letters are for, to instruct the incoming president. He says, "Before I leave my note to the 45th president," doesn't name him, "I wanted to say one final thank you for the honor of serving as your 44th. And then he goes and talks to you folks, you Americans so-called, those of you that are listening. And you know, by the time he gets all the way down to the bottom, he makes this statement. "And when the arc of progress seems slow, remember, America is not the project of any one person. The single most powerful word in our democracy is the word we the people. We shall overcome." Now, that period. Now, then he says, yes, we can, and yet that's the end of the letter, and he never talks to Trump in this letter, ever, which I found just fascinating. But more importantly, he's giving a notice to the progressives. When the arc of progress seems slow, he's anticipating that their progression of destruction is going to be slowed up underneath the new administration. That he's rallying those people together to stick together. We got to go through this time as the progressive agenda starts to slow in our determination for our democracy. The guy goes out admitting he's he will and he did, and he worked hard to defeat the Republican-formed representative government, which is the only thing that recognizes your patent information, your property, and all those things that have been defeated by the Bar Association because you didn't know about all that. This guy is saying this in the last paragraph. We the people, folks. People is the legislature. People are the whole people, not you. Remember, I've talked about all this. We shall overcome, referencing Martin Luther King, I suppose, and maybe some other civil rights leaders. You folks really need to, if you haven't done it, and if you have, you can go do it again. I'm stunned every time I read it. How many times? Maybe 1,000 times by now I've read it over the years. Title 42, Section 1981 of the United States Code. You shall be subject to pains, penalties, punishments, and exactions, fees, fines, taxes, exactions of every kind. You shall be subject in all your civil rights. You shall be subject to exactions, extortions of every kind, is what this guy referenced, and never gets back to talking to Trump. Is this guy being unqualified to serve? His final note was perfect for me to see. I couldn't wait to get this guy out. Not just not get the guy, to see the guy go. Don't let the door hit, folks. We have been so destroyed as a people, we don't even understand what he's talking about, and I assume I'm assuming that most people don't understand what he was saying. He's saying, turtle up, progressives, time's going to get slow here, but this thing wasn't made by one guy. And this is a project. Maybe the project for the new American century, even. Did you know that, folks? He's not even calling it an experiment anymore. So there's a lot in here if you want to see it. I was interested in what his parting shot would be, and to me it's instructive, but it's also also intrigued me and kind of got me chuckling a bit. What a slap in the face to the transition. This guy was not happy whatsoever in how the election turned out. For whatever the deep state meaning might be or not, I'm not talking about that. This guy, they lost big time. They don't have the control. And I'm telling you right now, and I can't know what the new guy's going to do. If he just does some of the things he's already talked about, even in the executive orders to undo some of the oppression, to define from the top of the executive branch what the agencies will define waters, if he can go through and do a few of those and remove their question of their authority over private land and private use and private enjoyment, which means your productive use, folks, means you getting out in the world without the servitudes, then more power to us that he's going to be there to do that. Because underneath the other guys, the other people, forget it. I told you, it was, even so, we're still battling here. We still have to figure a way to get to the administration to line them in on what they actually need to do. We're still working to do that, but so I'm still stuck to this millstone, if you will. But it would have been guaranteed. I told you 10 years. If I lasted that long, it'd be 10 years of a millstone around my neck, and those of us that have committed to attack this thing that's attacking us from the inside. That's why I say, folks, it's taken every one of us. I don't know what else to say about that. Everyone wants to make excuses. I don't know what to say. That doesn't stop me from disregarding all the pretenders, all the complainers, all the contrarians, more importantly, all the noise. We just keep doing what we do. And because there's only a handful of us doing it, and I'm talking a handful of us across the nation, there's the people I work with. I'm sure there's other groups of people that are doing it right. There's little pockets here and there that start to understand better and do better. But that's why it goes so slow. So going on, and the departing shots going on, in scathing attack of CIA Director Brennan warns Trump to watch what he says. I thought this was fascinating. This is a guy who's on his way out. Well, that just shows you how powerful his word was. Does he understand he's talking about the most powerful executive in the government he's employed by? Who should watch what he says? I found was an interesting position. It's also a threat. Now, he couches these statements, but when you go through and see what he was saying, he's literally challenging the executive officer he works for and threatens the existence of the political establishment by implying there's subversives inside that'll work against him. These are like really close to treason, folks. These are terrorism. Any act you do that changes the political will that is a terrorism. Any act moving as in contrary to make war on the laws of the United States, to try and take, as it's put in the patent sense, to believe you can take cognizance of the patent as an issue by a judge is a treason. It makes war on the laws of the United States, which the patent is evidence of the fulfillment of that law. To make war on that patent by saying you have a standing to decide an issue that doesn't exist is a treason. How fast this is for us if we just understood how that pulls together. So this CIA director, Brennan, he's warning Trump. Well, Trump comes out here. The first thing he goes to was the intelligence agency. Has about 400, as it was reported, 400 people, employees coming to listen to Trump. He says, I love you guys. I don't have a problem with you. And that's the truth. He has a problem with a few people that didn't like him being in there. I take no position one way or the other. I'm just saying, look at how nuts it's gotten within the government. And that might be a good thing. Michael Moore saying Trump may be in a Molotov cocktail thrown into into a place, I think is probably true. I'm just hoping that for us, we, the people, not the people in the legislature, but we, the men and women, can actually take advantage of the potential of the chaos to actually direct the Molotov cocktail to the right place and for the right reason. Now, everyone will say, "Oh, you got to work the system to do that." Well, these are just people making decisions, folks. I'd rather have influence over that decision and have that signature go on something that I can agree with, and not that I agree with it because it's my opinion. No, that agrees with the objective basis that makes this a peaceful place. If I can get a signature on something that recognizes that, I'm all for it. And it's not going to happen if I sit in a chat room or in a ditch or crying in my beer or knowing so much that I know that nothing will work. That's not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it. I know all the contrarians are saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." That's okay, fine. Sit and complain. Putin warns of Maidan-style attempt to delegitimize Trump. Doesn't believe Trump used hookers in Moscow. Interesting little story going on. We talked a little bit about this last week, I think. My view on this was Putin identifying, as I talked to you about the color revolution in the United States, is ongoing. This is what I think Putin is telling us. United States, look out. You have an internal Maidan-style in Kiev, Ukraine, style insurrection going on. So if the Democrat bomb throwers that were destroyers that were didn't like what's coming on, they're willing to destroy things. They're willing to turn into that anarchy, to destroy the chaos, to throw the monkey wrenches everywhere. And that warning from Putin, I think we need to take very clearly. I found it interesting, his correlation between what we're seeing happening as a character. It's a war against the character of Trump as a Maidan-style color revolution. I think we need to take a special look at that and really consider what that is, and we need to start identifying those that would be aiders and abettors of this, even in ignorance. We need to clarify that. Another, call out what they're doing as opposed to what they say they're doing. Put the terms, the factual terms on what's going on, and don't give it any air at all. We have to raise the bar of principle here. You don't tolerate, even if it's an expression, there's no expression actually being made for dumping a garbage can over and lighting it on fire, and then having a photographer called a so-called journalist step up to a wad of paper burning and saying this is the conflagration of protest. It doesn't mean anything. It's not something we can allow. A lot of people are talking about it. Another, like the Million Woman March that's going on. They're saying, well, where were you when Obama was bombing the world? Where were you when Israel was bombing the Palestinians? Where were you when this hypocrisy was happening with Clinton and all this? Where were you, folks? Call it out. We have to stop the insanity somewhere. I don't know if you can. If you got a bunch of insane people, I'm not sure if it's truly possible. So you have to understand that's one of the obstacles. I don't know what they think they're doing. You burn a trash can, all of a sudden Trump loses power. I don't understand what that is. I don't know how it influences anybody. But they're doing it. This is what people go to. We are so immature as well that this is, again, the kind of relates into thinking you know a lot and you don't know a damn thing. You certainly aren't acting if you did know something that's better, and you have no evidence of it either. What did I say? Evidence. All the time evidence. What's your evidence? What's your example? What's working, what ain't? Give me what you're doing. So if it doesn't work, be honest that it doesn't work, so we all don't make that mistake. So we can get past that. So okay, great, thank you. I don't like that you made the mistake. Glad that you survived it. Let's not do that again. Let's keep moving. Talked before as well. I want to keep touching these things that keep coming back and around. They're notices to y'all. This is I don't know quite how it works out, and I don't know when it does, and I don't know how much we're insulated in the United States of America. They keep threatening the thing. They keep giving us a threat about now China. We're pivoting to China. They can destroy us economically and all this other stuff. And so the writing's on the wall. I don't think it's about that. It's about getting you to agree to your next servitude. Clamp the chains on a little bit, the shackles on a little bit tighter. Davos elites evil lights, elites, call for ban on physical cash in the United States. Again, I start reading. I was going to start reading. Why? There are some people out there that have some influence that are calling for the ban of physical cash. This is where they want to go. They're giving you the notice it's for real. I'm asking you to consider making the alternative that's been objectively provided to us in weight and measure, and make an alternative. It doesn't have to be in the weight and measure either, but you're going to have to all come together as people to figure out what you're going to use and trust. And I'm not sold on this blockchain whatsoever. I've told you that from the beginning. I think it's great technology. I think it's a great thing at one level, but it's not being developed for you. When you understand about technocracy, I think Patrick Wood wrote a book called Technocracy Rising. Now he thinks it's an end and I think his book is he thinks it's an end and the end result. I say it's a tool. I guess it doesn't matter. It's going to be coming. The technocracy's coming. Silent weapons, quiet wars, folks. You're going to you get plugged in. They're plugging you in, and if you don't have an alternative, whatever it is, they've got control of that part. Davos elites, evil lights, are call for ban on physical cash, and then we hear, and I told you before about the blockchain. Be careful. They're going to officialize it. SWIFT global banking system pilots blockchain tech. Was another report came right on out to tell us. Remember I told you about the property in Chicago. They're experimenting with a pilot program for blockchain on your titles, which are really just the abstracts. So you don't even understand how they're stealing away everything from you. You got to think in evidence. What's the evidence? What's the evidence? How do I have it or don't I? There's rules for all that. So you need to find those rules. Why do you find those rules? Not because someone else made it. It's because that's what we can all balance. We can all weigh and balance what our actions are against an objective basis. It doesn't fall to the mind and opinion of a judge. The law of land, the law of the land, and the land of the law, instead of the opinion of man or woman, is what the objective basis I keep trying to tell you need to embrace. But the piloting the blockchain through a development bank it's a global interbank messaging organization. Is launching a proof of concept project using blockchain technology that keeps track of cross-border bank funds in real time. Won't read more. I think it's something you need to understand. The blockchain is coming. They're going to go cashless. They're going to take away your power. They're going to take away your autonomy. They're going to take away whatever they can. We're seeing the evidence in other countries. They're devaluing or demonetizing certain bills. They're changing the bills. They're doing certain things and everyone thinks it's a great thing because, we're going to go after organized crime. The government is the biggest organized crime, and no one seems to understand that part. And they're doing it on this substitution of reality instead of the reality. They go on abstracts of money as money instead of the real money, the real weight and measure. The physical evidence of the physical thing is no different than what they've done in this, and what they'll do in blockchain is to remove us and put our lives in an abstract of the life, the summary of a full life, removing the evidence that we needed to make substance of it, which made us different everywhere. So if they take that away, we're not different anymore, are we? So those of you that want to blow up the system, I think you better really rethink what's going on here. You better hold to the things that were substantial and foundational that gave us an ability to not fight amongst ourselves, make an objective basis that's not determined on someone's opinion. You better hold on to that stuff, otherwise you have no foundation. They're going to a cashless society at the global level. That wasn't told to us just to say, we're going to try something and, it might fail. No, this is coming. This is going to work it out. They're working it out, and you are going to be, woe is us, folks, if we don't figure out a lot of alternatives, actually. And we have it in us. It's all of our determination. That's why I keep telling you that. Understanding what a mining district was, when the miners were outlaws themselves, where there was a government oppressor that would go after them, they still created their own internal government to protect themselves. Is an example that really rings solid in my ears how this works for us, how we, the men and women of the country, are the power. And it's not really making the mining district more than understanding the underlying power was in each man or woman that made up the assembly. That's where the district got its power, and that power in the land could not be taken away from us or interfered with us unless the government became the oppressor and or criminal. And that all of us should be able to beat a fiction pretty easily if we just started to understand this stuff. So, moving on. I try to move on here. Tick, tick, tick. Trying to get some ideas together, trying to give you a flow of ideas that's going on. Really kind of keeping your head on a swivel, if you will, to understand there's a lot to have to deal with. And if we don't want to be blindsided, I guess today is one of the, maybe the title, I don't know. I'm going to make this stuff as I go after the fact. I just have an idea moving, and I just try to reference all this. We need to understand what's going on. We need to not disregard it. We need to understand everything that's going on and not allow to become important things of unimportance, and allow the meanings of things to come through despite maybe their fictional nature, despite their fake nature. Like I said, it's notice to us. Everything is a piece of information. What value are you putting on it? What are you going to do, more importantly, with that? If anything, even holding it as a standard might even be of value. So I'm not making that decision. I'm trying to explain certain underlying principles of what's going on that we really have to hold to. And if we don't put those principles in action, our customs and traditions and things like that, those are so, so important. I can't even tell you. I can't even describe to you how important they are when you look at the system. And we do that. Those are all in us to do. Assange would agree to extradition if Obama pardons Chelsea Manning, WikiLeaks says, I couldn't get to this. I broached the idea of the problem of pardoning, correct? Last week. That's why I'm only talking about it today. The unqualified one, in fact, did what? What was my discussion last week? Was the deciding factor pardoning or clemency when I said that the million witnesses said that Snowden needed to be pardoned? And I said that was the wrong answer, and now we have a bunch of million-plus false witnesses because the qualified one can't pardon without a prosecution, without a punishment to relieve fully. There was another provision within that. If you want to go read the definition, it's called clemency. It's not pardon, but it is the same power of the president or the executive officer. Could be the governor. The president of your states is the governor. That the question was, this Assange would agree to extradition to the United States if Obama pardons Chelsea Manning, became a question in the media and the social media, which shows me a complete confusion over this whole issue. It took me 3 or 4 days to finally get an answer that I thought I could trust over this that I didn't see anybody asking. When Obama reduced the sentence of Chelsea Manning till May, and then Chelsea's out, Bradley Manning. Genetically, he's a male, folks, notwithstanding his feelings. The question was, did Assange, because of the misinterpretation of even the ACLU of what the president could do on the million witnesses of pardon, is a pardon, did Assange say pardon or clemency? The reports had it all confused. I finally got to the statement of Assange's attorney on a video that actually made the distinction that clemency was way short of the agreement of Assange for a pardon, that he would agree to an extradition. That under even the question of the clemency pardon distinction, the word is, it seems to me, that the Assange's attorney makes the distinction and asserts that Assange said pardon. So, right there, I don't think that Assange is going to agree. I tweeted out a comment, did the WikiLeaks understand the distinction? And then I also said, where Assange said he would be looking to go as extradition, he would submit himself to the courts if justice was available. I said, do you even know that an Article 3 court is not available to you? Now, nobody responds to me ever, it seems. Well, they do when they have a little they do have when they have their little pet peeve that they're trying to protect. That's always funny. I'm laughing right now. I've kind of got a silent gut bust going on over this anarchy stuff in my feed. But anyway, it's just hilarious, the incongruities that build in people's minds that they don't even understand. I don't even have 140 characters to explain it, and I don't have the time to explain it. But it just starts to become this massive, laughable joke as we move along with the wrong interpretations of what's going on. That this pardon clemency thing came out, it becomes a question. They make it confusing, and they've maintained the confusion. I started to focus on that because as long as we stay confused, as long as the terminology isn't objective, by whomever is going to be using that, it's not our definition, it's who is making the decision with their definition that you have to look at. Why I was saying the dictionaries kind of fail at this point. What is their power? You got to go find out what that is, and what do they reference in their action? If they can come and beat you down, you better take reference to what they're talking about. You better use that language. When Obama's using democracy, you're in a Republican form of government, you better be able to make that decision, and it's not a definition, it's a function. If you don't understand that, you're missing it. But the story comes out again on this Assange thing. WikiLeaks to U.S., Assange will turn himself in if you pardon Manning, ends up being the statement. And the distinction being that pardoning is not clemency. And Assange can be the man of his word and not be extradited on his condition that he would be. It's something I want you all to pay attention to, because the failure to maintain the exactness of this is how they're defeating us. They make it sound like these definitions, they're not definitions, these powers and authorities that work, what they mean and how they work. You confuse that, you're confused, and you'll never understand what's going on. And you'll be the million people that signed up to witness that Snowden was a criminal, needing pardon, not knowing that what you just did was a real false witness, folks. You're not supposed to do that, let alone ask for a pardon. I mean, really, what did Snowden do? For whatever I think about Snowden, what did he do yet? We don't even know. A lot of allegation going around, but what did he do? Can you tell me what he did in law? Can you tell me the harm that was happened that was proved beyond a reasonable doubt, or whatever the standard is when they stick him in the administrative courts? Can you tell me what that was? And if you can't, why did you witness? Why did you believe you're witnessing some rah-rah behind Manning, Assange, Snowden, any of these people? Apparently, the attorney actually for Assange knows the distinction. And I see this as our failure. It's not about the book dictionary definition. I hear everyone, it's important to know all the definitions, but I told you, look at those as jurisdictional definitions. You can't just use the word and say, oh, this is what it says, out of context, place, purpose, and intent, use. All that has to come. All that has to be applied. I know it sounds like a lot, but it isn't after you start doing it correctly. I mean, not correctly, but after you start doing it, exercising it, you start to do it more correctly, I should have said. There's always that question, possibly, when push comes to shove, when there's two competing interests that are legitimate, like they use the word standing, each competing interest has standing, then maybe the ultimate meaning of certain terms might come into play. But for the most part, I haven't seen that that's important. Because I don't deal in questions myself. I deal in the things that are set apart. The encroachment of which is a crime. That's not a question. It's not even an allegation. That's why you show cause you haven't done this, because it looks like, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind you violated this. Like for the patent issue, you used a color of authority that even your as a political subdivision, your superior, your sovereign, says that they don't have an interest in. And you're trying to either take jurisdiction, authority, and power and remedy for your own, or handing it to the third party, which could be yourself or some other third party. Those are felonies, folks. And that's the crime side. Don't forget the fiduciary. We don't even talk about the fiduciary side that the patent actually sits in, the relationship side. So we start getting these terms all messed up, and we start thinking we need to be talking about, pardoning myself before I need a pardon, and you don't realize, no, it's not even relevant yet, as I said. And my question was, does Assange's attorney, what was it said? Did he agree to the pardon, that he would come back, or was it the clemency? It turns out, at least by the words out of the attorney's mouth on a video, they know the difference. Why didn't they speak up against the million people that signed up against Snowden? What is this ongoing deception that goes on to not clarify things for us so that we get it better? That I come here every week to try and straighten out on the scantest of subject matters as I choose it, because I got not a whole lot of response from y'all wanting to know about certain things. As anybody in the chat on Saturday saw, when I could jump in, I had, 2, maybe 3 very definite things I wanted to convey. And at that point, that's some serious stuff. I'm hearing people are going to get in some real bad, they have a real bad way and they need some help. And those that were well-read understood what I was saying. I can't tell you it was a solution. I can just suggest it as an option of a remedy and hope they can do the rest. So this is not a question. This is not an issue. This is not, I didn't have to go to the dictionaries over all that. These are actionable remedies that are to be acted upon. There's no trifling here. And as soon as we get out of all that and understand this dialogue, well, we're going to be a whole lot better. We'll see right through stuff, call it out. You want to talk about being able to out fake news and all this other fakeness? I do that every week I come here. I do this every week. I don't know why it's a question. I don't know why I've got a challenge by lots of people, except pretenders, contrarians, ego. I don't know. I don't know what it all is. It just doesn't work. For most people, it's not working, and they want to question me on my success. It's pretty fascinating. One guy who seems to be plugging on all cylinders is John Rappaport. He brings out another one. We're talking about hacking your life and hacking things and the traverse that goes on to give you something, some shiny thing to focus on, and you go over to look at it, well, they club you in the head. You never should have left that narrow path that you're supposed to be maintaining. The big one, how environmental killing becomes a medical disease. How environmental killing becomes a medical disease. Was just another one of these exposés of how these people, these specialists, these experts, create a field that they're going to cover, that they cover exclusive to everybody else, and they're on the special bus and you're not. And you think they're an authority, and they redefine things for you, like like the psychiatry. Just make up terms and say a bunch of subjective actions would equate to that. Nothing evidentiary, actually. He goes on to now talk about the giant pig farm disaster, a medical hoax and cover story. He talks about the pig's fly flu. Remember that, folks? The swine flu? I called when it would be real when pigs fly, is what I said. How many years ago? He shows you how the pig industry, how pigs put out like 10 times more waste than humans do, the animals that we are, and that they really do need sewage treatment plants, and that they don't, they're actually spreading a bunch of problems around for people to get a hold of. They get to get and enjoy the diseases of the pigs, and pigs that are given antibiotics and all this other stuff. That he goes off on a little bit different tangent than I think I would, in order to explain to you what I started to get out of this and where we may be getting it wrong. Not that John's wrong in identifying, exposing us to how the government changes an environmental problem to a medical problem, which they profit from, handily. But my observation here was, this is where people, these farmers, these ranchers, these people that are servicing the production side, really have a problem feeding y'all. And we do have some real problems. That when it was identified that there's 10,000 pigs on a farm, which they're talking about one of these, the Smithfield farms. One of the biggest one in this country now is owned, companies, pig processing companies, pork producing companies, is owned now by China. For those of you that I told you that as in the 80s when Japan came to the United States to get rid of its cash, China would be doing the same thing. And now they got trillions. They went into their food production and our minerals, their coal and stuff. But specific to this, when it's found out that the pigs put out 10 times more waste, if you have a 10,000 population in a city, they put out enough waste to equal 100,000. That should kind of give us the idea we need a sewage treatment plant. He mentions that. John Rappaport mentions that. What I wanted to point out is if people understood what the obligations and duties of the government are to us and to producers, this really wouldn't be a question. No different than we proposed to a little town in eastern Oregon, the middle of nowhere in the mountains, when the Forest Service jumped on this little town and tried to use the EPA to force all the 500 or 600 people there to raise a bond to create a sewage treatment plant. One of my colleagues, I advised him to run over to the mayor and say, hey, here's what they actually have to do. They have to tell the Forest Service if the water level is not sufficient, the Forest Service has to build a dam so the water level is sufficient to make it so the water purity stays above federal requirements. And that's if you can do that. Secondly, if you can, go ahead. Then you have to, if you can't, then you have to turn to the EPA, who's making the demand, to make the sewage treatment plant. And the federal government, has to pay for it. We put that before the mayor. The mayor then turned around and put that before the agency. They shut up for a long time. They came back. EPA said, we'll put in the sewage treatment plant. What we'd like you to do is cover the cost of this and this and this. So it wasn't a perfect win, but the little town only had to come up with a couple $100,000, I think, overall on a multi-million-dollar sewage treatment plant. They certainly didn't want to make that dam, I can tell you that. And so this is the same answer. I looked at this. We have in our hands the answers that would solve problems. These are real problems. I don't know why we do it wrong. I don't know why we allow it to become a problem where the government continues to allow corporations to profit and harm us at the same time, and our food system, and the pigs. I mean, I don't like this whole thing, but I don't know what else to do. I'm a meat eater. I can't help it. I tried not to eat meat. I told you about all this. It didn't work. 8 months, it just didn't work. I did everything I thought. I had to have chicken soup to fix the problem. I'm a meat eater. I don't eat a lot, but I have to have a bit. So pigs are kind of that problem. But we have the power as producers and people to say, EPA or state, you have to build a sewage treatment plant. Now, why don't we? I can sit here quiet. None of you probably have an answer. But I have experience that when you make those proper demands, you stop the government from thinking they can regulate you, and you show their obligation and duty is on them, things change. See, when you have a producer trying to produce for the rest of the country, they're not supposed to be burdened with the costs that the society also puts on them for, let's say, cleanliness. In the case of waste disposal. No, all the people by the Treasury are supposed to step in and build that waste disposal system for that company. Because why? They are supplying you. Or, the way the taxes work, they're supplying the needs of the persons liable, the other corporations. Which is another problem because these producers are now considered corporations instead of the producers, to show the chasm is even bigger. In other words, in this country of land disposal law and use and enjoyment, the producers have a special place that is supposed to be assisted, fostered, encouraged, protected, supported, and all the other good side things by the government. You all, if I can put it that way. Why? Because the producer is feeding y'all. And so I see an expose that John does so well, and right in here I'm reading, well, why don't they step up and instead of being the target of a harm, becoming the pig farmer being a source of the government's ability and other corporations' ability to take advantage and opportunity for their sake, why isn't the command made down as law requires to make that sewage treatment plant is something you have a right to know about, as I just told you, and look around your world and see if maybe you can't start to assert that around you if you didn't know what else to do. Maybe you have a pig farm around you that doesn't smell so good. Maybe you can go do some research in your state and the federal law and find out what I'm talking about is the correct way, and then approach it the correct way. Again, I don't just on and on until these thoughts. Did I even? I'll have to say it again. I don't know if I said it. I hate to take all the time it takes. Did I say that this is for prodcast and pastcast? This is BTWRLM 198. Now that I'm over 2 hours in. Wow. Wow. Anyway, so I get off. And there we are. Not so cool. Now, for you all listeners on the past cast. Anyway, here we are. To me, this is a pretty neat thing we could actually start to do. And I don't know why we're not doing it. It's there for us to do. We complain a lot. We worry about all the things that are done wrong, and yet we don't bring the right things and show a simple answer to this. Now, this false information, the opportunists in government and corporations taking benefit of these systems do, instead of doing the right thing. In other words, the producer may not understand that he has the right to do it, but you can inform him of that, and maybe they would agree because they do have a problem. They understand this. They just don't have an answer for it. Maybe you might be the first thought about how that starts to work. Maybe you get them to work with you as well. And because you can point out the objective reason why it's not their expense, it's actually the society's expense through the governmental treasury to aid and support the production, you can bring that to them. But you need to have the right information. And so one of the things that John was talking about was big pharma, medical conditions being fabricated by environmental events and elements. Right in time with this, there was another report, and it's in a foreign language. It's in German, and I have a little bit of trouble getting a lot of translators to even look at the page. I finally found one. You'll get the link to that in the blogcaster to be able to translate this over, and it's a rough translation. I always hate to make discussions about this because I don't know if it's translated quite correctly, but I took out some passages that look like they may have been translated correctly. Now, when you get to this translator given you, it's a Yandex. It's in Russian. You'll have to understand how to find the English language. It's the first two letters you're looking for is A and an H. That's A-N in Russian. You're looking for Anglish is what it's going to be. So A and H, and then a hockey. It's not really a hockey thing. It's a right-facing bracket. Only the top. Horizontal to the center and then down. That's a G. So the letters translate. You can read it if you look here. They're small print, but look for A, H, and then this bracket is the first three letters. Click that and then put this link in that I'll give you on the blogcaster so you can read this for yourself. Maybe those of you that know German can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I found out the translator said was these two things. The information that we are proceeding on that the experts say that ain't so. The two quotes that I got here, there's actually a couple more I'll read from this. And this is based on the challenge to the existence of the measles virus. It's in German court. A high court determined the evidence showed that there was no performed control experiments by authors of many papers on the subject regarding the existence of a measles virus, and this error became the basis of the belief in the existence of all pathogenic viruses. The failure of control in analyzing viruses creates the belief in the existence of all pathogenic viruses, and this was found to be wrong. There is no actual proof of the existence of a pathogenic virus. The result of this, and I'm paraphrasing a lot, there's a bit to read, this admission may explain increased vaccine damage rate, specifically measles vaccination, and why and how vaccination increased autism triggers. The experts, the scientists, the people that are doing the research didn't have a scientific basis and did not have proper controls to support a belief in the existence of a pathogen or a whole class of pathogens that an entire laws and entire industry is based on. They don't claim what it is. There hasn't been a scientific study to find out whatever it is. What it is. What Clinton said. Depends on what is. Yeah. This was, to me, earth-shattering, rocking. I mean, what are you going to say? This is devastating finding. That they can't actually prove the existence of all pathogenic viruses, though this case was focused on measles. I'm just shaking my head inside of my head reading the things. My head's not shaking, but there's a little guy inside that's shaking. Maybe I've got an alien in me. He's just shaking his head. The experts say, folks, these are liars. These are lies. They all just justify themselves. When you push comes to shove, somebody stood up, a doctor I think he was, stood up to challenge this theory, this idea, this belief. And it wasn't provable. Do we know what they are? Well, we might. It might be knowable. But what the industry of pharma and virus, but maybe bacteriological and fungicides and oh darn it, what was the other one? I think Wilhelm Reif. I get these names mixed up. I'm sorry. Fix the name. The Reif generator guy. He figured out that these critters change their form depending on the environment they exist in. And so we get back to a little bit of that just to show you it kind of moves over, that we are being told wrong. It's being a color of authority that covers a lie. It's a felony against all of us. I can say the same words everywhere where we find this condition. Experts say. How often have we talked about it? I don't know if I was one of the first to actually repeatedly broach it early on. I know I've done it forever. I don't know who else might have been doing it. Experts say. In fact, me and William Roberts, it was kind of like a joke between us. We finally picked that up together. I started saying it, then I heard him start to say it. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to, no credit here for first. I'm saying that we see that there is this lie. We try to tell you all there's lies everywhere. When I say challenge authorities, I'm not joking, and there's a ways to do it, and they make it so tedious. That has to change too. We need to flip the presumption of truth on these experts off to you really do have to prove this. This case may allow you to see what that standard needs to be. And maybe when we start to put that pressure, the other things, like I told you, well, maybe the government should just make a sewage treatment plant and get done with it. Oh, and they would have to pay for the cost of operation, too. Don't let them talk you into it. You can agree to do that, but don't let them talk you into it, because what they say, what the courts say, we agree to this, that no one should have to pay the burden for the benefit to the many on environmental or police powers issues. All right? So there's very foundational theory, very foundation for what I'm saying. You just need to find it and stay there. And then you need to find out whether or not when someone tries to make elbow their way in, whether or not they had the right to do that or whether that was a crime. I was fascinated by this. There was now a court case, if we needed one, that proved that there is no actual scientific basis for the belief of the existence of all pathogenic viruses. What a statement, folks. So you can get it. You can see it for yourself. Again, I couldn't find a translator that picked up that page. I did find one. It's Yandex. You have to go through. It's in Russian, so you have to go through and select the English language. It's AH right-facing corner. You'll see it. And you look for that. It's about 3 or 4 down from the left-hand side of the list. Click on that. Then put the link I have for you on this article. It'll automatically translate. It's kind of fun. It puts it in German and immediately flashes it in English. And it's translated, so it's not perfect. Just read through it. More information. Things they do and the things they don't understand that cause us to do certain things, and we wonder why nature gets stronger. What doesn't defeat us, strengthens us is certainly the adage that we can apply to antibiotics against viruses because we don't understand what they are. And I needed just a public service announcement, nothing else. I used to do a lot of the recalls. Just how it became so many. I finally told you folks, just might as well make a tab for all the recalls. And look, that's what's been going on in our food system. I've never seen so many, diseases coming through our food system anymore. What the heck's up with that? But anyway, here's one that's very, very serious. U.S. woman dies of infection resistant to all 26 available antibiotics. I thought it was something you need to know if you haven't heard about it. A U.S. woman has died from an infection that was resistant to all 26 available antibiotics, health officials said this week, raising new concerns about the rise of dangerous superbugs, so-called little critters, little beasties. They're pretty tough. because we don't understand them. We just got the proof now. We don't understand what they are. They make lots of money on making guesses and by gollies and throwing any kind of chemistry at it. It doesn't matter. Now you're going to start dying. There's nothing can stop this type of a thing here. Now, if that would have been me back in the 90s, I'd be dead. I had one of these little beasties that was about ready to kill me. Somehow I didn't last. I lasted longer than the 4 days it kills everybody. I told you about that. I would be dead if that wasn't available. And now it's not. So, kind of an interesting thought in my mind. Won't go on again. I could read it. I don't know. You don't refer back to me to say read. So I don't, and I don't want to read. I'm just telling you that there's more to see here. It's really noticed to you. It depends on how much you want to be noticed. I provide the links. It takes quite a long time after in the blogcaster. I ask you to go there and look. Some of you do. A lot more of you don't. Anyway. Very important. We need to keep aware of what's going on. We need to understand how. The question: how are they able to make an antibiotic that was working if they don't understand the virus? If they don't understand the pathogen? If their belief is not strong enough to overcome reality, folks, you're going to have a problem. Okay. I mean, so many things flashed through my mind when I said that. It's wow. Wow. Apply that across the board on all your beliefs, folks. Things you believe that just ain't so. As I try to advance to y'all, there's just certain things that you can objectively prove in reality and certain other things that just become this ongoing noise in your life that you keep perpetuating because you don't lay the foundation. To the point now the anarchists are arguing over what anarchy is. It's just fascinating to me. Like I said, I'm busting a gut over that. I can't get past it somehow. They don't even understand the problem enough to understand that they're in the problem. They don't understand the dynamic of how it's so ludicrous what's going on. And I see this in so many different areas. And we just have to stop that in ourselves. This is ourselves, a problem in us. Now, we believe authorita, we believe experts. Experts say a court case, a guy finally stands up with enough credentials to be able to fight, which is another problem. Not every one of you can do it. They only allow it to certain people, and despite all the corruption there might be, it was shown that there's no proof for the expert to say what they believe. Now, I hear crickets. Now, okay, notice to you first time on that story, I don't know how many people got it. I was shaking my head on that. I could not believe to see the proof in the pudding, so to speak. And I have to then take, given that that the translation was sufficient enough for me to interpret that. I just highlighted the very important things that came to me in that passage. It says that they cannot prove a belief with an actual pathogenic virus, and that on all of them, folks. And yet we make medicine, so-called. Now, moving on over to another thing that a long time ago we talked about that is coming back to haunt us. Now, finally, I didn't know why this took so long, but here it is. Remember I talked a long time ago, for those of you who've been with me for a long time, boatloads of the trillions that went over, the trillions with the T. Two boatloads of trillions went over to Britain. A U.S. quietly, this is a couple weeks ago, I finally get to it, U.S. quietly drops bombshell. Wall Street banks have $2 trillion European exposure. Do I hear you laughing? Did you guys break through? Did I hear a little bit of big burst out of laughing here? Was that a quiet bombshell at all, folks? This is how they're promoting. This is a quiet bombshell. No, they told us that 2 trillion, what I called the boatload of trillions, went over to Europe, went into Britain. I thought it was coming back a lot sooner than now, and it's not even coming back. It's just being retold and exposed as a bombshell to y'all to explain the trouble that we're going to be in and saying the writing's on the wall. I want you to read how the dynamic is. So me telling you, a lot of people misinterpret me anyway. And I don't have the mind all on this to know exactly everything that's going on about it. But they're finally retelling us that there's a $2 trillion exposure as Brexit starts to happen. I told you all of this is for a reason, and we're seeing the fallout now of the notices to us that eventually become paralysis in your life through policies, financial and monetary policies that bring on what we'll understand as austerity. Whether or not the new administration can curb that, I don't know. stopping, making the definition of the extent of the Clean Water Act to navigable rivers only will not stop this problem on you. And so, everything's got its own thing and purpose. Again, how they describe things, we talked about the Obama, the unqualified one, describing the United States as a democracy that he was ruling roughshod over. And we get the story a little bit, actually weeks before that. Democrats want 9/11 style special commission to probe Russia. This is now getting Putin's insight about this is a Maidan style color revolution. The Democratic members of the United States Congress called Monday for the creation of an independent commission to investigate Russia's attempts to intervene in the 2016 election, similar to a September 11th panel. Moving down to the second paragraph, their Protecting Our Democracy Act would create a 12-member bipartisan independent panel to interview witnesses, obtain documents, etc., etc. Now, what they are over may be a democracy, but what you are supposed to be guaranteed is a Republican form of representative government. Can you tell me the difference? It's in function, folks, not in a definition. So your legislators believe you are in a democracy. They want this commission. They define their protection, their policies in the democratic sense. They have no recognition of what they're supposed to be doing here. It is, to me, another power that you can use. It's beyond, that's right, Ron Stephen, when they were having a discussion about this democracy, some guy running for office doesn't want to lay down an objective basis for his terms. It has nothing to do really with the definition. It's what's the function. For us, it's a lot clearer than it may be in Canada. So, but your Congress is saying you want the title of the act, Protecting Our Democracy. Well, this is what Obama is saying. He's leaving in a reduced form. That you progressives now are going to get in a tough space now. The arc of progress is going to diminish here. But stay true to the project. This is what Congress just called for in something that was a lie. Something which was not even viable. And so, what do we do? That's kind of out there. What do we do? Maybe we need to get local. Maybe we need to start talking to the congressmen. Maybe we need to start saying, you better straighten your stuff up. I don't care that you're all a bunch of Republicans. You're allowing this Democratic stuff without telling everybody we don't live in a republic. And if you're not saying that, maybe you don't understand. And if you don't understand, then you're not doing your obligation and duty to the people, not the legislators, the men and women in the country. Maybe you have no clue. Maybe that's why we're where we are. Maybe that's why someone like Trump stepped in. People don't even understand it. He spoke to they keep saying what he's saying is populist. Absolutely. He's speaking to your sentiment, but he's not speaking in substance to it. That's why I'm waiting for his deeds. I hope you are too. We can only see what happens, the fallout now of this thing. It's potentially sitting there. But as long as we have a bunch of people in places that are that are the whole people, your representatives, so-called, of that fiction, they think that the thing that they're doing is in a different function. Not likely is that thing's going to change. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope something that I have said today helped you, gave you some guidance, and something you can use, something you can apply, something you can work on. Thank you very much, Grimner, for all you do. Again, iHeart.com. I think we're on. We'll get all the past casts, not live there. RealLibertyMedia.com, FreedomsNetwork.com for the social network. Thank you very much, Bo Diddy and Grimner. UCY.TV. Thank you, Jules. Appreciate your simulcasting and your passive broadcasting that you do. And terrestrial broadcast, we always appreciate you sending it out to those Luddites out there that may be the only ones that can hear the broadcast, given there's going to be a frequency left when the big one hits. So take care. I'll be here next week. Tech Diffs and Nature Willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening